Thought I'd go for a purplish look today. I think we've all seen this gorilla experiment where you have a few people playing basketball and then they tell you to count how many passes the team made. And then at the end, they ask if you saw the gorilla. And most people don't actually see the gorilla. And there's also like sort of plays on that experiment where you think you're looking for the gorilla, but then the curtain actually changes and you don't even spot that. And it's crazy. And there are a lot of tests like this. There's another test where there's two people walking by and someone's asking them for directions. And as they're asking them for directions, someone walks by with like a sort of cupboard or with an object that they're moving, and they walk in between the two people, and the person asking for direction swaps, and the person actually helping them doesn't even realize that they swapped. Like what the hell? If you haven't watched that, pause this video, go and watch those experiments and come back, because I think you're gonna find out something about yourself that you didn't know. Now, what are those experiments even meant to show us? Like, sure, we couldn't spot the gorilla, but it's deeper than that. What those studies teach us is you only see what you're looking out for. See, as humans, we have a vision. We're sort of, in some sense, purpose oriented. And so, for example, you're trying to count the amount of dribbles that occur. You're really oblivious to everything else that's occurring in the surroundings. You're not paying attention to that. And the exact same thing, when the guy's helping the other individual with how to read a map or where to find his way, what he's focusing on is on the assistants and not the individual themselves. And in a given scenario, we have so much stimuli, so much things happening around us, but we only pay attention to those things that matter to us. And so in a crowd of, let's say, 10,000 people, where everyone's speaking and everyone's going wild, and all of a sudden someone says your name, you switch and you turn towards them because that's a stimulus that matters. Now let's envision a world where everyone functions off this. Everyone's walking around society. Everyone's going about their daily life, only interested in the things that are in their mind. They're purpose driven. They're walking towards work. They're finishing from university. They're going to a family gathering. They're going to see some friends. And that's the thing that's on their mind. And so when something tries to squeeze itself into another individual's life that's not in their vision, they're blinded to it. And this explains so much. On an individual level, it probably answers why a person walked by you one day and you waved to them and they didn't recognize you and they just walked straight by. They were probably on their way to something oblivious to everything else. Or the teacher that finishes their tutorial and just waddles out of class. They're there for their purpose. They're blinded to everything else. Or that person that's crossing the road, focused on their phone, not realizing and not even hearing the sound of a car moving towards them. They're blinded by their vision. But let's take this to an international scale, because that's always what I do. On an international scale, countries have their interests, governments have their interests. They're trying to build themselves economically. They're trying to serve the interests of the people. They're trying to grow their power. They're trying to compete in a continuously divided world. Now, in a situation like that, why is it that countries would pay attention to the ailments of another? Why is it that countries or governments will turn their eyes towards people that might be suffering or being oppressed? And it explains why so many don't actually turn to their attention or don't turn their attention towards their help, because they're blinded by their focus. They're blinded by the things that they view as important. They're blinded by their own economic, their own political, their own power interest, advancing the interest of their own country. And a lot of the time, it's only when that matter becomes in their country's interest that they'll actually turn their eyes towards it. So for example, the Gulf nations became a massive interest to the US because they discovered, oil, and they had this massive surplus, and the US created the pathways for them to export. But now that that's diminishing, the US sort of places a lessened importance on that region. And another example that's constantly brought up is the criticism by the West of certain monarchies in the Gulf because of their dictatorial governments. It's sort of absent. And so, for example, if you look at Western nations, they criticize so many dictatorships around the world. But when they have an interest in mind, they're blinded by their purpose. They can't criticize a monarchy that serves their interest, and so they abstain. And so this is why you don't see, for example, the US putting much pressure on Saudi Arabia to reform its government. And so back to the concept. We're blinded by our vision, by our purpose, by our interest. Anyway, so I usually finish off by saying, and this is what we have to do to solve that bias, but I don't know what to do with this one. I think just be aware, that's all I have for you. Anyway, subscribe for more videos.